everyone, Mike Vogel here for WashingtonCaps.com. Welcome back to another edition of Break the Ice, joined by crack producer Zach Garrett and today's guest, Mike Knuble, in town for the 50 Fest. Mm-hmm. Mike, what's this weekend been like for you? I mean, you're a guy who's got attachments to a number of different organizations, but and you played in, I want to talk about this a little bit later, in some of the most amazing markets in the U.S., but you came here kind of when hockey took off in D.C. So what's your impression of this 50 festival Caps are putting on here?
Well, it's great. I mean, these, like, you call them centennial years. I mean, I know it's a 50-year. I don't know what that term is for that. But, you know, the organization really puts a lot of effort and a lot of heart into it. And, you know, and to see how many guys come back is a lot of fun. So there's probably a dozen guys from my era, my 3 years here, that are here. So it's great to catch up and hear about, you know, where life has taken them, where they are in life, and catch up with kids and, you know, kind of their careers, how things went after we all went different ways. But certainly a lot of fun to catch up with the guys, you know, and then meet a few of the older guys and, you know, the guys who really started, you know, were here through, you know, the thick and thin, you know, of the early years and who grew with the city and with the team and the franchise. So, but then coming back, you know, I forgot how beautiful the city is. Riding to the hotel, I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot how pretty it is. And you walk in the rink, it still has the same vibe, you know. Not much has changed, you know. Yeah. So that's great. Just a lot of fun. Like, nothing but positive. It's so fun. Great event last night. Got an alumni game today, which is always put people to sleep, whoever's watching it. Yeah, but that's a lot of fun. And then the home opener tomorrow. So there's just one thing after another. It's a lot of fun. Well,
we want to talk a little bit about your career because you had a really amazing one. As a kid who was born in Toronto, and I think you grew up in the States, though, in Michigan, and that's where I'm from as well. But you went to the University of Michigan. You were one of those Red Berenson products. I feel like that was right around the time he was just churning out NHL talent. What was that experience like for you as a player and as a student, and how do you feel like that prepared you for the NHL and for the rest of your life?
Yeah, Red really flipped the program. So I got there in the early 90s. In the mid 80s, it was kind of a laughingstock a little bit. It was kind of a joke. I think even within the university, it was like, this program is like out of control. And so obviously he came in from being coach of the year in the NHL St. Louis Blues and kind of came back to his alma mater and really like flipped the program around. And then looking back at the roster, like there was, you know, so many guys played in the NHL from that group, that era, the early 90s. There was a ton of players. You know, Brendan Morrison was a guy here when the Hobie Baker played here a little bit in Washington, you know. And so off the top of my head, there's probably a few more guys that came through here, but I can't think right off the top of my head. But, you know, Red,
Matt Herr, I think.
Matt Herr. Yep. Matt Herr. He's here. Yes, exactly. There's one off the top of my head. I'm playing with him there. Yeah, awesome fact. I told somebody, I said, one of the only guys I ever played with drafted in the NHL, drafted in Major League Baseball. Drafted by the Atlanta Braves. So he was an unbelievable athlete, you know, so crazy, you know. But the amount of players that started coming out of there, Red ran it like a pro team. Little tough love every once in a while, you know, but and his, what was evident right from the start he sold you on was your pride to go to the University of Michigan and to be a Michigan Wolverine was a big deal, you know, and he really hammered that point home and we all drank that Kool-Aid, which was good, you know, and a lot of guys had a lot of pride, and guys have gone out playing the NHL, they're coaching, their managers, stuff like that in the league, and so really laid like kind of the blueprint to us, you know, for success in life and how hard it was going to be. And it's not always fun, you know, you're going to have to work and pay your dues, but you'll get there. And we had nice teams and made the national semifinal 3 times. They won the year after I left, you know, which is always like Murphy's Law, but we were always a national contender, had great teams, great players, and guys that were really proud to go to school there. And it was a great spot for me.
And you were opened the eyes of the Detroit Red Wings, right nearby. They draft you in the 4th round, and you step into the National Hockey League on, honestly, one of the greatest teams ever assembled. So that you know, it's a great point of pride, but it's tough lineup to crack. You got your name on the cup there that second year, but I want to talk about your first NHL game because it was a bit of a barn burner. Tell us that story.
I was going to go. I didn't know we were going with the questioning, but yes, no, and it's it's funny because it's a super famous hockey game in the state of Michigan, in the state of Colorado, obviously super famous game. But for people, out in different organizations out in the hockey world, and you can bring that up and talk about your first game, and people are like, I've seen that game. So for people listening and watching, it was Detroit versus Colorado. Patrick Waugh and Mike Vernon, goalies are fighting, like just an all-out brawl there. Darren McCarty attacked Claude Lemieux, residual from an incident the year before in playoffs when Claude Lemieux hit Chris Draper, broke his jaw, broke his cheekbone, all that stuff. So some fallout from that a year later. And those teams were, that was man's hockey. I was a young kid coming up there, and I'm like, holy cow, this is like no joke. Like they're Hall of Famers on each side. It was mean. They were nasty. The hockey was unbelievable. There were Peter Forsberg making plays, Igor Larionov. There were stars out there, skill guys, tough guys. Like it was a man's game at that time. That was a war. That was an all-out war. So anyway, that was my first game, Detroit, Colorado. March 26, 1997. You remember it. And huge brawl. We won that game. Probably 10 games left this season. We won that game in overtime. And then won the Stanley Cup in 97. Made the team the next year. We won again. We beat Washington in 98. So certainly a great spot to come in from. But you alluded to, tough lineup to crack. Before salary cap, man, Mike Ilitch, the Ilitch family, they could stockpile players like nobody's business, and there's probably 7 or 8 Hall of Famers on that team. Larry Murphy, who played here, Hall of Famer, Shanahan, Eisman, all the Russians, and it was a pretty special team. Had all the ingredients, and you had to be built. They were built the right way at that time because it was tough to get through Colorado, and St. Louis had a good team. Anaheim, it was hard to get through those teams, and so tough lineup to crack, but I think as a young player, being around Eismans and Shanahans, you saw how hard they worked to be sharp and to keep their games going, and it's a good influence on you when you're a young player.
And then you get moved to the New York Rangers, which was another team that was, with pre-salary cap era, was just stacking the deck every year with whatever free agents we could get. But you get a chance to play with your boyhood hero, Wayne Gretzky, there. And Noobs, I don't know how many guys, or if you're maybe even the only one that played with Gretzky and with Ovi.
I think I might be one of the only ones. I'm trying to think who came through here. Maybe like a Yager who played in New York too, but that was after Wayne. So I played with Wayne his last year. So it's like nobody before me played in Washington. I don't know. You'd have to dig deep. I don't think there is anybody though. But yeah, no, that was a real treat to play with Wayne his last year. You have like idols when you grow up, right? And then sometimes when you meet them, they're like flat. You're like, oh, that guy's not what I thought he was, but Wayne is that plus, and then some. He was such a great ambassador to the game. He understood his role, what he meant to the NHL at that point. This is pre-social media, pre all this stuff, and he knew he was the ambassador, and so you knew that people wanted his time wherever, especially when we were in Canada. It was, it was Wayne all the time. He was very good. Sneak out the back door. The bus is out front. I'm going to sneak around the back. He knew the game and how to play it, and he never complained about it. He just knew his role, and he knew and he embraced what he had to do for the league and the big picture. He's always very cognizant of the big picture. Some of my favorite times with him, when you fly back to New York, and then the airport they used was out in Rye, New York, and then people were in the city, and you ride this bus back down to the city or ride to the practice back, to kind of get everybody back together. You hop on this bus and either post games or whatever, but you would listen to him tell stories on the back of the bus, and literally you just turn around in your seat and just kind of put your hands up and just listen, and you just listen to him. So he had an amazing recall, and he was unbelievable. He remembered goals scored in like the 80s, when they were winning everything. He'd talk about a certain game and a certain moment in the game, and just listen to him tell stories and talk about games and players and moments that happened to the Edmonton Oilers and this guy and that guy, and you just turn around and listen. It was just great. You didn't say a word. Like, you were just sitting there listening. It was like, sitting around a campfire, like listening to the guy tell stories. But it was great, man. You just turn around. I remember him sitting on the bus and just holding court a little bit, and it wasn't because he thought he was like a big wheel or anything. He just loved to tell the stories, and guys were laughing and eat it up, and get them going, egg them on, and get more out of them and stuff. So that's kind of what I remember about him the most is, listen to him talk and just listen to him talk. It's great. Yeah.
As you see Ovi kind of creeping up on him for the all-time goal record. As a guy who's been teammates with both of them, what are your thoughts on watching that chase now?
Well, I think it's amazing that we're even having the conversation, right? That Alex is even nipping at Wayne's heels, and you go through, there's been some labor stoppages and lockouts and stuff like that. And so, you miss games because of that. I think Alex is, I think what they both have in common is longevity, right? Like they just play every game, right? They're not prone to injury. They don't miss huge chunks of time. I think if Alex has missed a dozen games in his career, it might be a couple of Suspensions, right? Right. I think I was around for a couple of those when he had Brian Campbell in Chicago. That was a couple game suspension. So if he's missed games, probably 20% are because of suspensions, right? So I guess that's okay. But like that's the thing, and people ask me too, like what, why was Wayne so good? I'm like, he plays all the time. Like he's always playing and always producing, and so that longevity I think is most striking thing, and that's why Alex came here as a young kid, right? Young kids are young kids in the league, and they like to have fun and do that stuff, and they evolve and they get older, they become fathers, they have families, and they kind of age, and they get maybe they take their career a little more seriously now. I got to work at it a little bit more. I can't be doing what I did before, and get my rest better, and I got to do this better and watch what I'm eating a little bit more, and and so that's the maturity coming in, and I'm going to stay in this game. Now, internally, I imagine he really wants to get this record. Is it going to happen? I hope so. It's really going to be fun the next year and a half to watch. My prediction is December 25 would be my prediction. Yeah, maybe about 14, 15 months from now, maybe somewhere in there, if conservatively speaking, and that's if everything goes right, I think Nick Backstrom and him, what a combo, and it's
you're on that line too.
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
A big part of that.
And whoever when I left, TJ came in there, and then there's been other players, and other guys that have kind of jumped in there, but that 1-2 combo, and then Mike Green and Johnny Carlson on the power play with him, feed him one-timers. I think those guys have been great. I'm kind of sad that Nick's been injured, right? Yeah. And Nick's been down. If Nick was healthy. If he were to be healthy and playing with him, this is almost like a lock. Yeah. It's for sure happening. You need those guys that ride with you. You can't do it by yourself. You need those guys that can, you need a couple guys that help you along. And Nick was such an important part of Alex's success. And Alex is going to score goals regardless, right? It doesn't matter. But Nick and him were such a deadly combo, just the way he could deliver the puck to him. And again, you can't underestimate the role of Mike Green and John Carlson up top. They're so good at getting him the one-timer into the wheelhouse, right? And give him that pass, and which is a very, very good art, very lost art, but they're very good at delivering the puck to him for years, and everybody knows it's coming, but it's still going in the net one way or another.
Yeah, I want to get back to your career a little bit too. You, Detroit, the Rangers, and then to Boston. So 3 straight original 6, just absolute hockey hotbeds. But your age 29 season in Boston, I think you have 14 points, played a little less than 10 minutes a game. You're a fourth line guy, pretty valuable player, but just kind of knocking around, moving from organization to organization. But at age 30, all of a sudden 30 goals. Tell us that story.
Well, it's not supposed to work that way, right? And I'm thankful. I was probably you probably start to get you get labeled, right? You're labeled as a player. You're pigeonholed, and the coaches think you can do this, and management thinks, well, you're worth this, and this is all you can do, and stuff like that. So that year, I got a chance to play with Joe Thornton and Glenn Murray because a bunch of other guys, their main winger was injured, Sergei Samsonov. They tried a number of guys, and finally they threw me in there, and it ends up being the break of a lifetime, right? And my career went from like basement dweller to the top floor, right? And then I popped for 30 goals that year. I think I was a scorer in college. I think I scored in the American League, but it's one thing to score in the NHL. It's a whole different thing. And so some of that, as a player, you're like, it's the old coaching cycle. Player says, well, give me a chance. I show what I can do. The coach says, well, show me what you can do, and I'll give you the chance, So it's like around and around and around, it's the chicken and the egg, And so finally I got my chance. And I think players get chances. You get opportunities. And you get put in spots. Sometimes the leash is very short. Sometimes it's a super tight window, and you only have a chance. And you got to get through that window, and you got to take the opportunity when you can get it. And thankfully, I hate to think back, if I didn't capitalize on that chance, where my career would have been, could have been done at age 30 or 32 or have been done. But, you get that chance and you put yourself in a new category, and all of a sudden it's like now there's more breaks. Your rope gets longer. You're playing with better players. You're on the power play a lot more because they know that you can do it. And the hard part is convincing somebody to do it. You can tell them you can do it all you want, but until you prove it, you get that opportunity and you do something with it. It's super satisfying. And at the end of the day, I went on to think, after that, I went like 10 years in a row with 20-plus goals. Yeah. So, it got me another 10 years in the league, which, now all of a sudden I made it till I was 40. Like that's pretty good. Yeah. So that 30 year was really good. And I followed it up with a decent year. I think the next year, mid-20s or something. Yeah. So to prove it's not a fluke a little bit. 30 goals is still 30 goals. That's going to get somebody's attention.
Yeah. 29 a couple of times. But like you said, 20 every year for 6, 8, 10 years in a row.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was so gratifying to see you reach 1,000 games here, because I think you were 39. You were maybe one of the oldest guys ever to get, and you could tell what it meant to you and how important it was for you to, once you were that close, to nail that down. When you came to Washington, obviously this team was right on the cusp. I think President's Trophy that first year.
My first year,
here.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that series against Montreal is so vexing, especially because you scored a goal there in the early minutes of the third period of Game 7 that got waved off.
Called it back, yeah.
What do you remember about that? Because honestly, that one sticks in the craw of a lot of people around here 15 years down the road.
Right. I'd love to see the video again, and it's been a while since I've seen the video. I get the feeling that it's probably in the crease or something, right? They're calling it, or there wasn't even really goaltender interference like that hawkish, you know what I mean? Like, but I think I had a few of them waved off in the course of the years, like that. Yeah, and the timing of that, because I think we, you're in Game 7. I think we were up 3-1 in the series, right? Yeah. And so now you're at home and you're trailing. You're getting a third period, so really the screws are starting to tight. And the building's getting tight. Everybody's kind of like, this is gonna, is this gonna happen? I found out in some of my Game 7s, a couple in Boston, that game too. It's like the home team, you have the advantage. All right, we're Game 7 at home, and it's almost like if you don't put the hammer down the first 10 minutes, and then it's like, it's like this weird like, oh, this is getting drawn out. This isn't good. And I feel like the pendulum swings. Like the pendulum's certainly toward the home team in the start, right?
And momentum's everything.
Yeah, and you get that first 10 minutes, and like if you don't capitalize, or even if you go down one, and I don't even know if they scored in the first 10. I don't know. We were down for a while in that game, right? So it's like
I think it was 1-0.
Yeah, and then you like the pendulum goes to the visiting team, and it just I've seen it before in Boston and playing against Montreal too. It's like if you don't get them in the first 10 minutes, like the next 50 get really hard, and it's really tight, and the building starts to get a little anxious, and everybody's a little tight, and so, but anyway, it's, that was unfortunate. Doing some of these things as alumni thing and kind of drumming up that season again. George made some late season acquisitions, got Scotty Walker, got Jason Arnott, got Scott Hannon. Like we had a lot of good parts here, Roman Hammer, like a veteran on defense. Like we had a lot of good parts, and that was really frustrating to lose that, because I felt, the window was opening. You had the younger guys, you had Green and Backstrom and Ovi were coming into who they were as players, and they were turning into stars, and supplement it with some older guys that could, help fill in some of the gaps. And man, that was one I felt like got away. I felt like that was a Stanley Cup caliber team for sure, and it kind of slipped by us there. And obviously they jumped through that window a couple years later, but man, I thought we had a nice group there. That was a good group, and George made some real nice deals at the end to solidify the team. And we had a little bit of everything. We had toughness, we could skate, we had skill, we had tough skill, we had hard skill. Like it was a nice team. That was one that slipped through the fingers. That was one of my regrets here, that team didn't achieve a little bit more, while we were here.
It's funny too, because 2 years later, probably a lesser team, because you guys were a 7th seed. You go in to play the Bruins in the first round. They're the defending Stanley Cup champs. Braden Holtby puts himself on the map in that series. All 7 games decided by 1 goal. You guys beat beat them on Joel Ward's goal in overtime. I know you were on the ice for that, so I want to get to that in a second. But the Rangers series, the next series was kind of the same way. All tight games, 2-1 in Game 7. You guys were so close to getting to the and this is under Dale Hunter too, who took over in the middle of that season. So I mean that was kind of the little engine that could, but that goal that Joel Ward scored was so fortuitous. And you, I think, early in that series were healthy scratch a little bit, and you were only in the lineup because Nicky got suspended for whacking Rich Peverly, cross-checking him after the game. That got you back in the lineup, and even when Nicky came back, you stayed in, and you were on the ice when Wardo scored.
I think earlier in that series, maybe that was Game 7. That'd be an odd number game, so we probably went 2-2, 1-1-1. So one of those games, whatever, it must have been Game 5 or something. I got in. I think I was scratched for a little bit. I got in. I scored. I scored in at Boston in a regular season game, or I mean somewhere in that series. And I don't know if it's game. Whatever. I got in the lineup and I scored, and then stuck in the lineup, right? So we get down to Game 7 there, and Wardo and I. So just play got dumped into our end in front of their bench. So our goalie was must have been period 4. Or was it single overtime or triple? I don't know what it was.
First
so
overtime.
The goalies were down at the opposite ends because we were down. Puck came up in front of their bench. Came up in front of their bench, comes out to neutral ice. I think they hammered it, trying to hammer it back in to get a change. They hammered in. Everybody's kind of going for a change. It hits me right in the midsection. And I'm like, got all my energy, all my momentum's coming at the puck, flying right by their bench. I think I basically corral it like an interception. It's almost like an interception of a player. Corral it right there, kind of spit it out, make sure I don't get they don't blow it down, that I'm carrying the puck. I'm trying to spit it out in front of me. So it just kind of drops in front of me. Their whole group is wholesale changing. They think the puck's going in. They didn't see that it hit me in the midsection. So I fly right by the pile, and Wardo and I are gone. And somehow there's some defenseman there. I don't remember who it was, but going down on that, I'm like, well, you don't get very many chances. I'm like, Wardo, you're not getting this puck. I'm sorry, you're not getting this puck. This puck I'm carrying this right to the crease. I'm carrying this right to the top of the net. And we're jamming this thing in one way or another. It's getting in the net one way or another. So I go down there and I make some kind of half move on Timmy Thomas. My momentum takes me kind of into the goal. So now I'm standing kind of in the crease. I mean, you talk about a goal being called back. This one probably should have been called back. I'm standing kind of in the crease, straddling his legs, and Joe Ward, somehow I carry the defenseman, Timmy, the defenseman, we're all kind of in the blue paint, and the puck pops out, and Joel comes in and cleans it up, right? And certainly an electric feeling. Little vindication for me, kind of being a player that had been scratched, and Dale had me in the lineup at that point, which is, his hockey decisions, and a little vindication, that the fourth line we got it, and so super fun to help the team get to the next round. But that is certainly one of the more memorable goals, in my time in Washington was at Boston there, which was, that was really fun. But it's funny, and so now coaching, I've coached for I did a 6-7 year stint with the Grand Rapids Griffins, and so they're doing the referees. They evaluate the referees, and I think it's Mike McCourt who is the head of the officials, and he'd come in, he'd be like, "Remember that goal you guys scored in Boston?" He'd be like, "That wouldn't count today." And I was like, I'm like, "Oh well." And he'd come pat me on the back. He's like, we laugh. He's like, that goal. It's like, there's no way we would let that count anymore. And I'm like, oh well, I'm glad you let it count on that day. So that was good.
Well, Dave Pryor was always pretty salty about a goal that you scored with the Flyers against the Caps in the playoffs in, I guess, 2008, overtime goal against Cristobal Huet in Philadelphia. He contends to this day that one shouldn't have counted because you whacked Huey's pads right before just opened a little 2-inch.
I get it. Yeah, kind of plowed in there.
Crease. That was a total Philadelphia.
Yeah, we could
play.
debate that. We should cue that video up. Yeah, we should cue that up. We could debate that one all day. But yeah, absolutely. These days it might have had an influence on you were always interference. But
you were always around the crease.
Well,
that's where you made your
living.
That's
where I had to hang out. That was no good anywhere else. I had to hang around there.
I got to ask you too. Some of the guys that coached you over the course of your career: Scotty Bowman, Pat Burns, Mike Keenan, Ken Hitchcock, Peter Laviolette. I'm sure I'm missing some too, but you played for a kind of an all-star group of head coaches as an assistant with Grand Rapids later on. Whose voices were you hearing in your head, which coaches had the biggest influence on you?
Yeah. It's always interesting. People are like, who's your favorite coach? I'm like, it was the one who played me the most. That was the one, my favorite coach. Yeah. But I mean, I think you took a little bit from each guys, you and those are certainly like you learn something about Scotty. Like Scotty always kept everything uncomfortable, right? So you kind of had to learn to be uncomfortable, be comfortable being uncomfortable. You had to learn that. Mike Keenan was just like go a million miles an hour that way, and when it's time to turn, go a million miles an hour the other way, and just do everything hard, right? And he got this, like, he kind of created this panic, and he was a player. Like, if I'm not a star, I better be going out there trying to rip somebody's head off, and he created that. And then, you learn other things. Robbie Fatorik had face-off detail, so you take that from and you took different things from guys. Johnny Stevens was super patient. Right, Johnny Stevens still coaching today. Yeah. Long time, won Stanley Cup with LA, and he's a long time assistant now. And you take things from that. And I played you go all the way back to my time in Adirondack. Newell Brown, who's an assistant coach in Vancouver and Anaheim forever. I think he's basically credited with the slingshot, the drop back, play that people love or hate it on the power play
guru.
He had the Sedin's doing that. He basically created that. So there's guys all the way around that you just take things from a little bit here and there. You learn that your best way to coach his heart was being a good player. And didn't matter, and the better you played for them, the longer rope you got. So Hitch and I got along great because I played great. All of a sudden, they're listening to your opinions more. I've got Mike Sullivan in Boston, like he came on when Robbie Fatorik was let go. Then Sully came in.
There, I thought.
Yeah, and then Sully came in. So, I mean, it's the guys and then playing here, play for Bruce, which was an unbelievable personality. Dale was, his thing here. And so there's coaches everywhere, just along the lines. It's hard to say who your favorite was, but that fact doesn't go unrecognized by me that I played for some special coaches in the game of hockey, in the history of hockey, that got to play for guys that certainly are names, right? And then people are like, I know, like you bring it up when you start to talk about them, like, holy cow, those are some names that come through the legendary names in coaching, for better or worse. They were certainly big figures in the NHL.
Now looking back with the benefit of all this hindsight and your college career as a player, your kids are going through that same thing now. I think Cam went somewhere in Michigan,
Western Michigan. He's there,
and Cole is at Notre Dame,
yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Drafted by the Flyers.
Yep.
What's that like now? Being a hockey dad and watching their games and keeping up with what's going on with them and seeing them go that route too, getting the education and playing hockey.
Yeah. So going through the recruiting process when Cam started with Western Michigan, it was Andy Murray, right? Andy Murray's another coaching the figure, another big time, coached a ton of levels, coached international, coached college, coached the NHL, coached all over. So, and then it moved to Pat Ferschweiler, who I coached with in Grand Rapids. He was with Jeff Blashill in Grand Rapids, and he went to Detroit with Jeff Blashill and then circled back around. And now it was the assistant at Western and is the head coach at Western. So, great influences. Cam is great influence. Andy Murray's a lot, right? Like he's a lot at the pro level. He's a lot. I mean, you hear stories. Every morning you'd wake up and there'd be a sheet of paper under your door with our forecheck and our scouting report. And guys are like, some would be like, boom, right in the trash can. Other guys would probably actually read it, but probably half would just be like, that's trash, and just sort of walk right over it on the way out of the room, But that's a great person at the college level for your son to work with and learn how the details of hockey and appreciate it and making them a man, And then Cole at Notre Dame, Jeff Jackson. Yeah. Coached me in high school. I mean, he coached me in a high school in an all-star game when he was a young assistant, and he was coaching Lake State when I was at Michigan, and helped create the U.S. development program. Coached for the Islanders. He coached pro hockey. He's been at Notre Dame for 20 plus years. He was retiring after this year. I don't know if you knew that, but he's going to retire after this year. Just a great hockey man. Just a great. Who's I talking to on the way out here? Oh, I ran into a friend of ours on one of the flights out here. He's a pro scout with Toronto. We were on the same flight. So we're talking, and he has a relationship with Jeff. They spend time in the UP. They're both Sault Ste. Marie guys in the summer. They live near each other. So he's talking about how they hang out a little bit in the summer. And I'm like, he's just a great hockey man. Just hockey, just the guy gets hockey, you know, and these are great like men for your son to be around, for your sons to be around, and going through the coaching process. And sure, it makes it a little easier when you're going through recruiting. You talk and you have some history, and it kind of breaks the ice, and you're not all nervous around the coaches. But you know, in our hockey background, you know, by the end of the day, those guys, you know, it's then they get them to school, and hey, you got to fight for your spot on the team, and this and that, and you know, make and become a man while you're here. And so, and those guys are great. You know, Andy Murray, Pat Ferschweiler, and Jeff Jackson at Notre Dame are just great influences on your boys as people. And you know, you want them, you know, you want them to be a hell of a hockey player when they leave that place, right? You want them to enjoy their time in hockey, but you know, show them how, you know, I can talk, and it goes in one ear, out the other. But when those guys say it, it means something to them, and that's who you want influencing your kid for 4 years. You know, while they're at school and day in and day out, away from hockey, how they conduct themselves, all that stuff. When they make mistakes, you know, they help correct them, and on and off the ice, and so yeah, they were very, very fortunate in that respect. They're playing for really good, again, good hockey men, you know, at their colleges.
Well, I know for a fact that you were a real good influence on a bunch of younger guys during your day here. Guys talk about you reverently after you left, and it was always good running into you in Detroit. I remember sharing a couple of team meals while other guys were up taking their naps. You and I just having a conversation. And I remember the days of doing the crosswords while we were waiting for the bus for morning skate and stuff. So you're always looked upon reverently here, and I'm fortunate that our paths crossed there for a few years. It's been great to see you, and I thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Oh, thanks, folks. It's always nice to hear. It's great to be back. These guys are, watch these young guys come up now, and all the kids in our hotel and everybody here. It's great to catch up with guys and see how they've evolved through time and where they are in their lives and their careers and stuff. So, certainly a great run here. I wish it was longer than 3 years, but it was. I got here at age 37. You know, you only have so much time left at that point before they're trying to put you out to pasture. You know, but enjoyed our time here. Our family enjoyed it. We had a lot of good times here.
Well, it's been great to see you. Thanks to Mike Knuble for stopping by, Break the Ice.